Hi, Brian. Can we do a mic check?
Mic check, mic check. How was that?
Oh, I'll do the,
You hear me?
oh, we can now.
Okay.
Yep.
So far away with everybody sitting here. Oh, you're good. You're good. It just seems like a distance now without the full table. Yeah, I haven't even got to the peripheral. I know it's a lot to digest right before the meeting.
Brian, we just turned up your volume. Can we try once more? Make sure we can hear you.
Sure. How's that sound?
That is a whole lot better. We got you loud and clear now. Thank you
All
very
right.
much.
Thank you.
About one more minute and we'll get going this evening. All right. Sarah, we're ready on your end? All right. Well, good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming this evening. As you settle into your seats here, we will call to order the regularly scheduled meeting of Tuesday, February 13th, 2024. Please join me for a flag salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The Assembly of the City and Borough of Sitka would like to respectfully acknowledge the traditional First People of Sitka. With gratitude, we proceed on Tlingit Ani. Sarah, roll call, please.
Mayor Eisenbeis,
Here.
Mr. Mosier,
Here.
Mr. Yestad,
Here.
Mr. Christensen,
Here.
Mr. Celine,
Here.
and members Mosier and Carlson are, or no, excuse me. Members Pike and Carlson are absent this evening.
Thank you. Kevin, it sounds like you're excused. You can go ahead and go home then. Any correspondence or agenda changes this evening? Seeing none, that'll bring us to special reports. Is anyone here for government to government? Municipal boards, commissions, committees? Municipal departments? School district? And students and guests for special reports. Seeing none, that'll bring us to our first persons to be heard this evening. This is public participation for any item off of tonight's agenda, not to exceed 3 minutes for any individual.
Good evening. My name is Richard Ween. And my God, we live in a beautiful world. I watched the sunset this evening and I actually saw the green flash out there and took a lot of pictures. And I was also very happy that Tay and Travis, for them, that the Chiefs won. And meaning the Super Bowl. And what would make me even happier would be for me to see Tay with a baby bump. So Travis, you know what to do. Today is February 13th, and it is Fat Tuesday. And I said, oh, it must be an assembly day, because they're probably going to have lots of supplemental appropriations. Fat Tuesday. But the important thing here is that Fat Tuesday is also the day of Mardi Gras, because that's what it means in French. And what's important is that Mardi Gras is the day before Ash Wednesday. And that is a time of moderation, of fasting, of something where people begin to appreciate, I'll say, suffering in a very real way. And one of the things, the lessons I think of the beginning of Lent should be not to just get off of chocolate, which tomorrow is the 14th, so don't get rid of chocolate so quickly, but that the assembly needs to focus on forecasting and economic realities. Because I'm sure everybody here knows, sitting at the table, that the market closed down at 525 points. And why did the market close down? Well, I hope you also know about the government pronouncements on CPI, Consumer Price Index, and other governmental indexes, where inflation is continuing to raise its ugly head. But we know that people here in Sitka, we shouldn't worry, because Sitkans are immune from outside external economic forces. And the way I can tell that is because of the way I see the economic spending within this city. And part of the problem is, if people do forecasting, you can't run things on grants and wishes. Thank you.
Anyone else for persons to be heard? Any item off of tonight's agenda?
Good evening, Tyler Green. Just 2 points. I won't even make it my 3 minutes, but first one is the pools in the city of Sitka here. I'm getting kind of tired of telling my 5-year-old that the pool's closed again. I don't know what's going on. I've heard many different things, but we can only fill so many potholes on Wachusett. That's our daily activity with me and my daughter now. So we're done filling the potholes. So let's get moving on these pools. I don't know what's going on, but let's do something. I mean, we're already limited what our kids can do in this town. Secondly, on Catley-Ann, the restricted deed house, that there's been nothing's been done about it. Something needs to be done about it. I understand what restricted deed is. We all know what restricted deed is, but it's getting kind of ridiculous. I mean, it's an obstruction to commerce in this city. That's all I have. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Leah Mason. I'm coming out of a slightly different direction for this persons to be heard. I just wanted to, I guess, make it clear to various people in the community that we'll be talking about a lot of things which involve carbon emissions and fossil fuels, as a lot of our economic and other systems rely on it. But we do not have a lot of time to start distancing ourselves from that for a lot of different reasons. And at Transition Sitka, we have chosen Earth Day, April 22 in 2030 as an appropriate target for reaching some of those goals. And so as part of this, I would just like to make a general announcement that we have 2,258 days until that point. So just a heads up. Thank you.
Hi there, my name is Sarah Haddad Dems. I just, on the ordinance for the bus traffic.
And ma'am, we'll have to wait until that ordinance comes up. This
Oh.
is persons to be heard for items off of the agenda.
Off the, okay.
Yeah.
Sorry.
There will be an opportunity at that time. though.
Okay, sorry.
Thank you. Yes, Kevin?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just gonna make a quick announcement. I would normally do this during reports at the end of the meeting, but sometimes people don't hear those, understandably so, especially when it's a long meeting. But as the liaison for the Sustainability Commission, I wanted to just share an announcement. I'm just gonna read this verbatim, be easier that way and quickly. I just want to encourage people who are interested to take the Sitka Community Renewable Energy Strategy survey. The Sitka Community Renewable Energy Strategy is a city and borough of Sitka-led project heavily supported by its Sustainability Commission in collaboration with energy experts via technical assistance from the Department of Energy's Energy Transition Initiative Partnership Project, also called ETIP. By establishing a shared vision of Sitka's energy future to guide energy-related decision, the SCRES, as we call acronym, will help shape a roadmap for community and policy actions that advance the shared energy vision. To help the technical team understand the community of Sitka a little better and shape their early work, they're conducting a survey to help inform them. That's at https://www.research.net/r/SCRESSITE. People can take it online, and there are also physical copies available by request at the planning office at City Hall. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else for persons to be heard off of tonight's agenda? Seeing none, that'll bring us to consent agenda.
I move to approve the consent agenda consisting of item A, approve the minutes of the January 9th and January 27th assembly meetings.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the consent agenda. Is there any public comment? Sarah, on the consent agenda?
All right, on the motion to approve the consent agenda, Mayor Eisenbeis,
Yes?
Mr. Christensen,
Yes.
Mr. Yestad,
Yes.
Mr. Mosier,
Yes.
and Mr. Celine.
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0 on item A.
Brings us this evening to board, commission, and committee appointments. Item B, please.
Go ahead. I move to reappoint Annette Evans to a 3-year term on the Health Needs and Human Services Commission and Margie Esquiro to a 3-year term on the Library Commission.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to reappoint those two individuals to their respected commissions. Is there any public comment on the reappointments?
Good evening. My name is Richard Ween. As per usual, anyone who stands up and wants to be on a board or a commission, I think deserves appropriate recognition. And as always, we have two outstanding community members who are long-term members. Annette Evans, I'm very happy she signed up for the full 3 years, a stellar individual. And another person is Margie Esquiro, who has been here since 1980, teacher extraordinaire, as well as a kindred spirit with me as a bibliophile, people who love books and reading. And I do have a conflict of interest. which is financial by mentioning Margie Esquiro, because I have here a bolo which was made by Peter Esquiro, and it's beautiful, and I actually wear it frequently. So we have a lot of talent stepping up to the plate, and thank you, Annette and Marge, for doing so.
Any other comments on the reappointment? Back to the assembly for deliberation. Sarah?
All right, on the motion to approve the reappointments, Mr. Yestad,
Yes.
Mayor Eisenbais,
Yes.
Mr. Mosher,
Yes.
Mr. Christensen,
Yes.
and Mr. Celine.
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0 on item B.
Brings us to unfinished business. Item C, please.
I move to approve ordinance 2024-01A on second and final reading, amending Title 11 Vehicles and Traffic of the Sitka General Code by updating Chapter 11.75 All-Purpose Vehicles.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve ordinance 24-01A. Is there any public comment?
My name is Richard Ween on this ordinance, which was nicely debated at the last meeting. It was amended, and it was amended in a very appropriate way, which took away some restrictions related to the users of the ATV, which allowed members, in essence, to travel the roads over a 24-hour cycle, which I think was very good and very wise, and I'd like to thank you. I think the ATV program has been very well run, and those people who are in charge really deserve a thank you for making sure their members are compliant and respectful. So again, thank you, Assembly.
Any other comments on the ordinance? Back to the assembly for deliberation.
I'm just gonna say, I don't really have anything to say because I think we did discuss it quite at length last time. Like it's already hashed out, and so I'll be supporting this.
I would agree. I think we debated it at length. Sarah?
All right, on the motion to approve ordinance 2024-01A on second and final reading, Mayor Eisenbais,
Yes.
Mr. Celine,
Yes.
Mr. Christensen,
Yeah.
Mr. Yestad,
Yes.
and Mr. Mosher.
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0 on item C.
Thank you. Item D, please.
I move to approve ordinance 2024-03 on second and final reading, making supplemental appropriations for fiscal year 2024 mid-year supplemental appropriations.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve ordinance 24-03. Is there any public comment?
Good evening. My name is Richard Ween. This is supplemental appropriations, which is mid-year. And it's very interesting that last time I had always asked for these things to be added up. So the supplemental appropriations that they're costing the city, at least citizens will know the total this time, because the assembly does supplemental appropriations all the time, and it'd be nice to have a running total. Tonight, it seems it's about $750,000 in supplementals. I'm not including the money to be advanced because of the Rasmussen funding that's coming in. And again, I always think that it would be nice to have the running totals, not only of the time during the supplemental request when they have multiple ones, but also a running total for the fiscal year. Of interest is that there is a zero effect one, which is called the Harrigan Centennial Hall supplies to planning for tourist-related expenses. And I kind of remember not too long ago, there was something about Harrigan Centennial Hall running out of supplies, and that there were some shortfalls. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I found that one a little interesting because Harrigan Centennial Hall also needs our support. And I wonder what that additional funding for the Planning Commission is going to be using that money for. So there needs to be more detail presented in the memo. Thank you.
Any other comments on ordinance 24-03? Back to the assembly for deliberation. Sarah?
Right, on the motion to approve ordinance 2024-03 on second and final reading, Mr. Yestad,
Yes.
Mr. Celine,
Yes.
Mr. Mosher,
Yes.
Mayor Eisenbais,
Yes.
and Mr. Christensen. Motion passes 5-0 on item D.
Item E, please.
I move to approve ordinance 2024-04 on second and final reading, making supplemental appropriations for fiscal year 2024 Thompson Harbor Lift Station replacement.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve ordinance 24-04. Is there any public comment? Back to the assembly for deliberation. Sarah?
All right, on the motion to approve ordinance 2024-04 on second and final reading, Mr. Mosher,
Yes.
Mayor Eisenbais,
Yes.
Mr. Celine,
Yes.
Mr. Christensen.
Yes.
And Mr. Yestad.
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0 on item E.
Thank you. That'll bring us to new business this evening. Item F.
I move to approve resolution 2024-06 on first and final reading, supporting the State of Alaska Department of Transportation and Public Facilities Airport Runway Seawall Project for the Sitka Rocky Gutierrez Airport.
Second.
Thank you. John, I understand Ron has a introduction to this item.
Yes.
Good evening. My name is Ron Vinson. I'm the Public Works Director for the City and Borough of Sitka. Tonight's request is seeking support in the form of resolution for a series of infrastructure improvements for the airport over there. DOT is, they're pulling together an evaluation board, I think on the 22nd, and that board's going to consider a number of projects across the state. Two that are being considered here locally are for an upgrade to LED lighting for the runway and some improvements to a seawall that's blocking some debris obstructions from blowing up on the runway. So overall, I think everything kind of funnels down to those two projects. The seawall seems to be a pretty critical one. There's some undermining going on right now. I think reinforcing it will extend the life of it and will help reinforce the structural integrity of the runway itself. So yeah, any questions?
If we have questions, we'll call you back up.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any public comment on resolution 24-06? Back to the assembly for deliberation. I just want to say thank you, Ron and crew, for staying on top of this. If we can send a letter of support, that's fairly easy, and hopefully it helps reduce some of that undermining out at the runway. Sarah?
All right, on the motion to approve or resolution 2024-06 on first and final reading, Mr. Mosher,
Yes.
Mr. Yestad,
Yes.
Mr. Christensen,
Yes.
Mr. Celine,
Yes.
and Mayor Eisenbais.
Yes.
Motion
Excuse me,
passed.
yes.
Motion passes 5-0 on item F.
Great, thank you. Sarah, for item G, do we need to get Sarah Singer Wilson on the phone? I'm not sure if she's on. Okay, great. So we can move on to item G then.
I move to approve resolution 2024-07 on first and final reading, adopting the 2022 to 2027 strategic plan updates.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve resolution 24-07. Sarah, thank you for joining us this evening to give a recap and these next steps here. I appreciate your introduction.
Excellent. Good evening, Mayor and Assembly members. I'm going to share my screen and take you through a few slides, just highlighting what has changed in the strategic plan and what's being proposed for the updates. All right, so just a quick overview. We'll just cover just to make sure anybody watching and people that are present tonight are familiar with the strategic plan. So I'll just do a quick overview, take you through the updates, and then talk about the next steps and try to answer any questions that you may have about the process. So the strategic plan, the framework, what you'll see in the plan is it's a result of a community engagement effort that took place in 2022. And the resulting work from that, we created a mission, a vision, the mission describing why the organization exists, the vision describing the city's desired future state, a series of values which guides the organization in doing the work, some goal areas that highlight how the city will advance the vision in alignment with the mission. And then under those goal areas, the things that we'll be talking about tonight are the actions that describe how each goal will be advanced. One of the things that we focused on in this year's conversation with the Assembly was also just maturing the plan. This was the first strategic plan the City and Borough of Sitka has completed, and so each year it will mature, and the implementation structure will again just kind of become more integrated within the culture of the organization. And so to help advance that this year, one of the things we talked about were the indicators of success, and so you'll see those here in a moment on the chart. But just to, again, you've seen this graphic before. We highlighted it at the workshop in January, but this is the ongoing process. So we did the town hall in December, the strategic planning workshop with the Assembly, January, February, and then from here, priorities will be assigned. That will be one of the next steps, KPIs, timelines, and all of this is done to help inform the budget process, which you guys will adopt this summer. Following the adoption of the budget, that's where you put the resources towards advancing the goals and actions, and then implementation continues. We do a progress check-in as we get into the winter, and then as this year, an annual report and celebration of the progress. So the mission, why the organization exists, it's providing public services for Sitka that support a livable community for all. The vision, the desired future state, is that it's an organization that values everyone, proactively working together to serve the community, being fiscally sustainable to support a diverse economy and well-managed infrastructure, innovative in seeking ways to protect and preserve Sitka's natural environment, and being a respected employer where people enjoy their work and provide valued public services. The values, as I mentioned, it's the lens that kind of overlays the implementation of all of the goals and actions. Are people, innovation, integrity, being sustainable, and service-oriented. So as far as the proposed strategic plan updates, the things we talked about at the Assembly workshop in January, where both the Assembly members and staff from the leadership team were present. The work we did leading up to the proposed updates were we reviewed the year one implementation highlights and then discussed the themes from the community survey and the other outreach that was conducted. So leading up to this work, we completed a town hall. There was a survey that went out to the community, gathering their responses as far as where the community thought the efforts should be focused in the coming year. And then in addition to that, there was engagement with the boards and commissions, and then obviously the work with the Assembly in January. So that all helped to inform the proposed updates. In addition, at the workshop, we did this SPOT analysis where we talked about strengths, problems, opportunities, and threats to help focus the conversation, thinking about where are we currently, before we think about where should we refine where we want to go. And then got into the discussion about updates for the plan and then indicators for success in each goal area. So what you see here on the slides are will be the goals at the top. And then the original action, if it has the lines through it, then we made modifications to it and the new language is there in red. So you'll see the goal language overall for this one did not change, preserving the quality of life and affordability for all Sitkans. And you should have received this in your packet, so I won't read every line. You've seen the proposed changes that are highlighted in the spreadsheet that were part of your meeting packet. But there were a few changes in this goal area. So this one being just changing, it was a minor change, but instead of convening the community partners, facilitating that in the conversation around access to childcare, around housing, it was identify opportunities to address housing needs through policies and CBS assets. And then this last one, again, it was a minor change from convening community partners to just facilitating those partners to develop an action plan around the challenges of food security. Over here on the right of the slide, you'll see a number of potential indicators that were highlighted. These indicators, which you'll see proposed for each goal area, help to give staff some additional direction as far as implementation and thinking about what's the story you want to tell to your community of success at the end of the year. And so the ones that are highlighted there, again, these were also in your packet, so I won't go through line by line. But those will help give staff additional guidance as they move into implementation of these actions this year. The next one, again, there were a couple minor changes for goal 2. It was about improving communications and strengthening relationships within the community. And before it was the organization, but the group decided that because there's in goal 5 really focuses on the organization and process improvements and communication improvements there, that this one was better focused just on the community. And then there were just a couple minor changes on that final action there. And again, a couple indicators that were identified to help measure success in this area. Oops. Hold on, it's going backwards. Okay, goal 3. There were no changes to this goal, so it's all the same, just the addition of a few potential indicators that will help to indicate success in this area. Goal 4, one change in that top action, which is just to identify infrastructure gaps and pursue funding to address those capital needs and deferred maintenance. And then again, the identification of indicators for this goal area. And then last, this is goal 5, which is focused around the organization and being a service provider. So CBS is recognized as being a great place to work and an excellent service provider to the community. All of these actions still felt very relevant to the group and still things that are in the works and in progress. There was one minor change made to this top action to just add as far as workforce development plans, also including plans and training around safety. And so then also some indicators highlighted for this area as well. So as far as the next steps, again, this is important because there are some new folks on the assembly, and so it's important to have their voices as part of this process and giving direction to staff as they think about how to resource this work. And so having the assembly weigh in on prioritization will be an important next step. So tonight it'd be helpful to get any comments or further direction from the assembly, and then following the adoption tonight, if you choose to adopt, will be to complete a prioritization survey that you can complete online, or and working together with staff, they can help you get your content in so that they have that data point and that direction from the assembly as far as how these actions and this work should be prioritized over the next year. It'll give them helpful guidance and as they go to develop the budget. And then after that happens, staff will continue to further develop those indicators, and as they work on the implementation side and moving the goals and actions forward. So with that, I'll just pause and see if there are any questions about the proposed changes or next steps.
And Sarah, if we did have questions, we would have to come back to them after our public comment period.
Oh,
Back at assembly deliberation. So do you have anything further at this point or?
no, that's the completion of my presentation.
Okay, great. So we'll go to public comment, and then if the assembly does have questions for you, we'll have an opportunity at that point.
Sounds great.
Thank you. Appreciate you.
Thanks.
Is there any public comment on resolution 24-07?
Good evening. My name is Richard Ween, and I'd like to thank the presenter for making the presentation. In the packets and available to the public is a 26-page kind of a slide review, and I recommend that all citizens please take a look at it. If you go to page 4, it talks about the values, which the presenter mentioned: people, innovation, integrity, sustainability, and service. I think those are wonderful values, but I found it's missing at least one thing, and that includes reality. Unfortunately, because of my training as a surgeon, you have to face reality in all of its most basic forms. And I think when you're running a city, economics become its own surgical reality. On item, I think it was E was the Thompson Lift transfer station. The reality there was that when they had the project in 2022, they put so much money down, but they found by the time they were looking to get started, due to inflation, which again, I mentioned creeped up today again against the forecasts and caused the market, the stock market to crash in a way, that it cost the city an additional $1.7 million. And I think there really needs to be a reality testing within the strategic plan. We hear about how we're going to have open finance and so forth, but yet I'm really not sure how all of this works in making a reasonable plan. And I feel that the city hall just keeps growing and growing. And if you look around the world, you can don't have to read very much to understand it's an interesting place, and that these are going to be affecting our economic issues. And Sitka is very, very sensitive to economic issues. As you know, our beautiful Paradise Island is fully dependent on fossil fuel for everything, goods and services that we have. You need reality. Another interesting thing is within the strategic plan, they talk about forecasting. I would really like to see some forecasting from the city administration. And another interesting thing about the tourism, the strategic plan is there, as far as the community input, there was a lot of interest in the tourism and how it affects the quality of life for every Sitkin. And it's just hard to know how all of this is going to shape out. Another interesting thing is that you're worried about subsistence. Thank you.
Any other comments on resolution 24-07? Seeing none, we'll bring it back to the assembly. If you did have questions for Sarah, she's still online as well. Please.
Hi there, Sarah. Thank you for giving the presentation. I just wanted to say thank you for giving us your time tonight, of course, and then along this process. I am very much in support of this as done. I know during that work session, I wasn't able to be there for the entire time because of work, but was able to give you guys input on the side. And I believe this is well thought out and good. That, we did the strategic plan last year. We started, so each year, a couple years, we're going to be tweaking it, seeing what's not been done right, if anything needs to change. That's why we're doing that for people who are listening. So I think it's a very valuable thing. So I just wanted to say thank you and appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Yeah, John.
Yeah, I also want to thank Sarah and her team. You know, she's really good at what she does. It was pretty amazing to see all the input from the community gathered in so many different ways, and the information from the assembly at not just this workshop, the one the year before. She does a great job at capturing this and putting it into a format that we can all read and understand and use in guiding our work. So thank you to your team, and thank you especially for helping us with the KPI development. That's one that we found over the past year has been relatively new to us. So your expertise there in helping us measure our successes and report our successes has been very beneficial. So thank you, Sarah.
You're welcome.
I guess for me, there was really no major changes to our strategic plan. So we're charging on generally in the same direction that we were before. There were some wording changes to strengthen some of the resolves, and some wording that assembly members found more conducive to completing the goals. But I think the main benefit of this exercise was getting this plan back in front of staff and assembly and reaffirming our commitment to it, that this is the direction that the community has said we should head, and that this is a guiding document in every decision that we make, we should refer back to and see if it does fit within the plan. So I think that was a massive benefit of doing this, that we may not have said quite as much. So, and thank you, Sarah. I do appreciate your time on both ends when you were able to come here, and your time tonight, however late it might be for you. So I appreciate you. Anything further from the assembly? Sarah, on the strategic plan.
All right, on the motion to approve resolution 2024-07 on first and final reading, Mayor Eisenbais,
Yes.
Mr. Christensen,
Yes.
Mr. Yestad,
Yes.
Mr. Mosher,
Yes.
and Mr. Celine.
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0 on item G.
Thank you. It's early for a break, but this one is going to take a while. Tor, do you want a break? Okay, so we'll take a brief recess before item H. No, it was counting down. Oh. It was. All right, well, thank you, everybody, for that break. A little bit earlier on our side, but I think we'll have quite a lot of public testimony on this next item. So I think it was worth it to take a break right before. So that does bring us to item H this evening.
I move to approve ordinance 2024-05 on first reading, amending Title 11 Vehicles and Traffic of the Sitka General Code by adding Chapter 11.85 Commercial Bus Permits.
Is there a second?
I will second for purposes of discussion and so that everyone here who wants to speak can speak. So second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve ordinance 24-05. Tor, do you have an introduction for this one?
Yeah, so as we all know, we've received daily complaints about the bus traffic for the last couple of years. And I felt that at the very least, we needed to give people a chance to talk about it. After talking with Brian and some other folks, we came up with this. And this is essentially does two things. One is requires annually to have buses, somebody to plug in a computer to their onboard system and check their emissions. I spent a fair amount of time talking to the EPA about this. It's very easy. And that we don't have the power to do anything else with emissions. That's the EPA's and the EPA's only, except for California, which got an exemption. So essentially buses are all large diesel engines are regulated by when they were manufactured. And so when you check it, plug it in, you can check to see if it's up to spec on the relevant regulations. One of the nice side effects of it, they were telling me, is that really the only reason there's two reasons why a vehicle would be out of compliance. One would be intentionally, which hopefully we wouldn't see, but the other one is that something's wrong with the engine. And that by fixing it, not only do you bring the emissions back under control, but you also have a better, something like a sticking valve or something. The other aspect is the permit, there would not be an unlimited number of permits. We put in 10 almost as a placeholder. The idea was that you could move approximately 800 people an hour, but fully understanding that we would be, probably amending that and having a discussion about this. And a lot of this is designed to have that discussion. This wouldn't solve all the problems we have with large vehicles in Sitka, but it's to take a bite out of it. It's not going to be the end all, and nor do we expect it to. But it's a chance to talk about and to put up some guardrails to somewhat take control of our roads again. That's the point of it, is to say there is a carrying capacity that our roads can handle, and we need to stay within that. And it's not just how much they weigh and things, but it's more how much noise, how much smell, how much extra traffic and extra congestion we're going to have. So as a whole. And so again, this was a chance for both up here at the assembly, but in the community to comment on this and to comment on the amount of extra traffic we have. I think I've said to a number of people that one of the biggest complaints we're hearing is that we're ignoring you, that you're not even talking about this. And so this is an attempt to say, okay, no, we're not. And this is your chance to speak to it. And like I said, if this goes on to next reading, or eventually if it gets passed, I expect it to look different, and that's okay. Obviously we'd be looking at multiple readings. But at some point we had to put something on the table, and I talked about this. I mentioned it at a few meetings ago, saying that we were working on this so nobody got blindsided. I went to the Tourism Commission and gave them the bullet points before we'd actually written it to allow them to comment on it. And so I'm sure we're going to have a lot of comments. We've gotten a lot of emails and phone calls. I know I have, which is fine. And the whole point, again, is to allow everybody in Sitka to have a certain amount of say on what goes on our roads. So with that, unless somebody has a question for me on why we did certain things, I think we'll hear what people have to say.
If we do have questions, we'll come back to you during our deliberation point. Thank you for the introduction. That would bring us to public comment on ordinance 24-05.
Hello, my name is Leah Mason, and I am speaking in support of the ordinance. I agree that there are some tweaks that probably need to be made. I've spent a lot of time looking at policy at the moment, so I'm very focused on categorical distinctions, and I think there are some that probably need to be tightened up. But other than that, I'm really happy that the city is contemplating taking a small step towards regulating activities that have a major but still poorly understood impact on our community. The memo that accompanied the audience mentions that the public's concerns on these matters are merited, and I agree. And it would be lovely to, and I take this opportunity to remind us all that questions regarding impacts on community infrastructure from higher levels of industrial cruise tourism were raised as part of the review of Sitka's 2022 short-term tourism plan. And at that time, several remarks were made that they were not able to look at those impacts, but that they should be, and that they should be soon. And I'd also like to remind people that I think we close to doubled the number of people in the year beyond that. So any kind of calm we may have had about the impacts of raised levels and the design limits of the existing systems were speculative at the time. But I think in the context of what is being discussed with the Tourism Task Force, when people are saying, yeah, hell, 500,000 every year, we need to keep in mind that our systems were absolutely not designed for that, and that the state government is not going to just decide to upgrade our roads at a faster rate because we want them to. I think it would be a good idea to know a little bit more about how fast we can get repairs made if we go ahead with allowing 5 million people and the buses that are required for that to take to the roads every year. We also need to consider that fixing those roads, if everyone remembers far enough back, takes months, and it's during summer. So we do need to be a little considered about our approach to allowing massively increased levels of wear and tear on the roads themselves, let alone the community surrounding them. So I find this ordinance extremely reassuring. We don't know enough about it, but we do know enough to start acting. And I am very grateful that that is the case here. So I would like to say thank you to the people proposing to move ahead with this, and remind everyone there were at least 2 other things that needed to be looked at from that plan.
Thank you. There's a button on the very bottom and the microphone will turn red. Thank you.
Yeah. Trudy Pruitt, Sitka Tours Island Bus and Pruitt Funeral Home. I cannot understand in any way what the sponsors of this ordinances are thinking. It is absolutely absurd, unwise, unjust, and serves no purpose other than to cause more conflict in our town. The Assembly's responsibility is to adopt wise, well thought through decisions on behalf of all Sitka residents. I would like to share my opinion with you elected officials how this sponsored ordinance will do no good whatsoever. Only 10 buses to be offered. Permits, only 10, really, and first come, first serve. There are 3 large companies that provide transportation services for incoming guests, for tourists, that own several more buses than that. buses that have been purchased for that purpose of being able to accommodate the guests getting into town. Remember back when not too long ago, the city paid us to provide that service. We went into debt for that. If the purpose of this ordinance is truly to establish an emission standard to protect the health of the public and protect Sitka roads, oh yes, not to be, and also not to be a nuisance on the roadways, then why just buses over 40 passengers? Why not include town buses, construction trucks, delivery trucks, fuel company trucks? Oh yeah, and then maybe the fishing vessels next. This ordinance will not affect only Sitka Tours people and companies. It will affect every business in town. It will impact the venues that we share with tourists, the Raptor Center, the Fortress of the Bear, the Science Center, St. Michael's, Sheldon Jackson, the National Park, Alaska Storytellers, and the New Archangel Dancers. Everyone will take unmentionable losses. Going a step further, this ordinance will put many out of work. Sitka Tours hires only local Sitkans that depend on tourist money to be able to live here. You would be firing them. Have you thought about these repercussions? My company does not get grants, scholarships, or any special fee funding. We need to work to make a profit. Profit's what pays the employees' checks. I pay city, state, and federal taxes. From your standpoint, have you thought about that? If this ordinance passes, Sitka Tours will fail. And after 50 years of blood, sweat, and tears, I feel it would be your fault. Another point, you fund Sitka, Visit Sitka. We all join and donate to them a lot of money. Now this ordinance says, don't bring guests to Sitka. My last thought for you to ponder is the bidding against each other, charging us transportation companies to bring the tourists into town, and other selfish, greedy ideas that have come
Thank you,
to
ma'am.
votes. I wish you would bring back the joy.
And please, for those in the crowd, you're going to hear opinions you agree with, and you're going to hear opinions you disagree with. I'd appreciate any refraint from either booing or clapping throughout the procedures tonight, just so that the people who want to come forward have a comfortable space in order to express their opinions. I thank you for that. Continuing on with public comment.
Evening, everybody. My name is Robert Emley. I'm working as a manager for Sitka Wildlife Tours, and we'll be purchasing this business in coming years. This ordinance guarantees that there will be a great reduction in customers coming to Centennial Hall in a timely manner to get out on their tours. People paid for squares at Centennial Hall, and now it seems like that this is a back step for that, right? If people can't get from their cruise ship to Centennial Hall, or they have to stand in line for 4 hours or 5 hours. The solution to taking the larger capacity buses off of the road would be to add more small capacity buses to the roads, which would be more traffic, time going around the roundabout, more congestion, more human error in accidents and risks involved with that. Please don't pass this ordinance as it stands. The last thing that I wanted to mention was the number of cruise ship passengers per day would be, I think, a better medium for measuring that industry instead of a totals for year. Around 5,000 per day or less. I think all of us can agree that 8,000 passenger day in the summertime is too much. Thanks.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Assembly members, Chuck Traschel, local businessman. Businessman in my family since 1919 with my great grandma started it. And I've got my youngest son is just getting involved in our business with us too now. And if we start kneecapping this business, the visitor industry, free enterprise is a very, it's not a novel idea. It's like, we just got to give it a chance. It'll find its own balance in time. It will work through it, and I feel the pros of the visitor industry definitely outweigh the cons. And as every season goes by, we have I feel it'll get better and stronger as we go along. And along with that, which is a huge revenue stream for the community, and which everybody can take advantage of. And but as a community here, my thought on a community is families, young families. And if we throw an obstruction like this against the industry, it just really makes it difficult for young people or young families to make this their home and for future generations. A lot of us are on that, no sales tax, we're at that age. And it's the young people. And we just I really oppose this, that there's better ways of going about it, and just give the industry a chance. It's a seasonal business, and I don't know how many seasons it would take, but every season we get smarter about how we go about doing things. And so with that, I just hope that that you do not support this ordinance. Thank you.
One more back on. If you hit the button one more time, it goes back on. There you go.
Okay.
Perfect. Thank you.
With the red on. Okay, thank you. Mr. Mayor and Assembly members, Cynthia Gibson, and I own and operate a tourism business called Alaska Storytellers. I would say 98% of our people that come to our show come from us on a bus that is part of a combination tour. And I think with this proposed decrease in buses, I don't know how the tours could continue, because you mentioned moving 800 passengers an hour. If you have 2,000 passengers, that's about 3 hours just to get people to town. So I don't see how then you can also take people on tour. When there's 5,000 passengers, it's over 6 hours just to bring all the passengers to town. So it just seems like there may be maybe a little bit more math could be done on the impact, because in 2016, I served on the Citizens Task Force to help the city figure out how to bridge the gap. They had a $723,000 a year deficit. And I spent 6 months on the task force coming up with ideas and researching and understanding the budget. And so I was very excited when I was able to see the annual report from 2023 and see that from 2019 to 2023, we had a $5 million surplus that we could put toward our sinking fund. That just made me super happy. And also the fact that we have a strategic plan. And I just feel like there are lacking facts in this ordinance that, when they're the intent is to improve air quality, but I have no idea by how much or what the problem with the air quality is. I've been to several annual health planning meetings in Sitka, and not once in the hundreds of problems that Sitka is trying to solve have I ever heard that Sitka has an air quality problem. So I don't know what that means when you say improve air quality. Improve safety and alleviate nuisances on the public roadways. Again, and tangibly, I don't know what that means. Like, what are the safety problems with the number of buses we currently have? And finally, you know, it goes on and on. It says to protect Sitka's integrity and a destination for visitors of all kinds. It's not really for visitors of all kinds. It's discriminating against cruise ship passengers because it's restricting their ability to travel and move in an efficient manner in the short time that they have here. And I would just encourage you to leave this to the tourism task force and the strategic planning process, that they are working on this and that we can be optimistic and hope, like Chuck said, that, you know, we will work out any issues that we are currently experiencing. Thank you.
It's already on. Hi, my name is Ryan Harris. I'm with Sitka Bike and Hike, and I was reading this ordinance and I felt like I needed to come down and talk about it. It seems like to me that the intent of this ordinance is to replace all commercial buses with electric vehicles. The reason why I ask this, or I say this, is because electric vehicles are exempt from this, as well as, I lost my spot. Due to the tour policies that we put in the guidelines last year, that all electric vehicles were exempt for those fees as well. Now, it seems like the intent is to move everyone to electric vehicles, which, if that's the case, I am not opposed to. But I do want to beg the question is, does Sitka have the infrastructure to support that? Let's say this goes into place and we're only allowed 10 of these buses and everyone switches over to electric vehicles. Well, now we have electric buses and we're at the same problem, and we don't have any charging stations or anything to support them. As well as, I would like to bring up that in the 2022 city annual report, about 90% of, or over 90% of our power came from hydroelectric, which that's good. That's a really great step in that direction. But it poses that not all of our power came from hydroelectric. There were a couple days where we were probably over our peak load and had to rely on our backup generators, which, if that's the case, how often are we going to be switching over to our backup generators? That's going to bring up fuel costs for the city. More regular maintenance is going to bring up that costs. And if the intent is for clean air, well, instead of buses, now all that is going to be more closer to our homes instead. Also, I would like to bring up that there was a study done by UAS regarding droughts that we've had in the past years. Some of that was, we were in a 3-year drought from 2016 to 2019, and that actually affected our water levels. That begs the question, if we're running these turbines at full peak all the time, are we going to have that same problem where we were in 2016, where we were getting water warnings from the city, as well as drought warnings? These are questions that I think we should think about before we're going for pushing these policies. I'm all for baby steps in the right direction, but I'd rather have my foot land on something I could see instead of just guessing in the dark. Anyways, thank you for your time. Those are things I think we should just think about with these policies.
Hello, I'm Barbara Bingham. I support the intent of the proposed ordinance for all the reasons that are stated in section 3 of the ordinance, the purpose. And per the terms of the ordinance itself and Larry Edwards' memo, there are a number of details that need further consideration. which will be difficult to resolve in the course of this meeting. I urge a yes vote on the first reading to allow time to carefully address the details that will certainly come up for discussion. A large majority of Sitkans want limits and control over the impacts of cruise tourism, including the stated purpose of the assembly in appointing the task force, the tourism task force, and we will be well served to carefully consider all avenues of control over the community's future and well-being that are available to us. So again, I urge a yes vote on this ordinance to allow time for consideration and amendments to the ordinance to make it work for as many people as possible. Thank you, Tor and Tim, for bringing this forward.
Hi, my name is Bethany Lawrence. I am also here with Sitka Bike and Hike. I am the opposite of the last one on the third intent listed in this proposal. It says it's to protect the condition and longevity of our public roadways. These commercial buses primarily travel on state highways, not city roadways. So it's state money that goes to that, not city money. It's an infrastructure problem. We need to be looking at building better roads. It's not the bus's fault that they need to move down the roads. So as far as the city is concerned, there's really no financial impact to our city budget to maintain those roadways. However, kind of near the beginning of the season here, there was an article that the paper posted stating that the city had a large surplus due to the revenues from tourism. Assembly took 4.8 million of that surplus and put it aside for future infrastructure projects that may be needed. My question is, wouldn't the city be losing money on this ordinance if it was passed? We would be taking a budget item that is mostly covered by the state budget and sacrificing a surplus of millions by tying the hands of this community to serve the industry that generates it. So I would encourage you to please vote no on this.
Hello again. My name is Sarah Haddad-Dem. And I just want to, although I agree that some of the reasons in the purpose are good, air quality, things like that are all good for Sitka. I think we need to be a little more cautious as to how we're proposing this. Maybe taking the approach that federal governments do when they want people to shift to more green initiatives, offering incentives, not just in the realm of electric vehicles, but also possibly hybrid vehicles. I agree with the earlier comment that it's not going to alleviate the amount of people trying to get to town, which means we're just going to have more traffic in the form of other vehicles, causing backups. You know, the buses are efficient at moving these people and doing it quickly. So taking that approach and giving us time to either, first of all, incentivize it, and then a date where we can work towards transitioning our fleets to more green emissions, if that's what the real goal is. If you were to enact this very quickly, which seems like you're wanting to do, it would be such a disruptor for all of the people involved, including nonprofits that count on these people to be at, for instance, the Bear Sanctuary, et cetera, at a certain time. Tours have already been sold for this coming year. It's going to create havoc. And so I think where the purpose is, I think, a genuine good reason, I think we need to approach this with caution and have an actual plan with data that we can apply towards these solutions, and make it so that it actually makes sense. I think Cindy's comment about the math's not math in here, you know, if you're never going to get those people down and back, that's going to just create a whole new sorts of problems. So I encourage you to do a little more research, do some data analysis, and then come up with a solution that's more long range and, you know, moving towards the goal that I think most of us share, which is a better community and serving the people that come to visit, and also serving us as local Sitkans and our health and welfare. Thank you.
Hello, Mayor and Assembly members. My name is Chris McGraw with Sitka Sound Cruise Terminal. As most of you know, I am responsible for probably a little less than half of the bus fleet in Sitka. We provide the shuttle from the cruise terminal to downtown. And I provided a written testimony in which I outlined our plans relating to upgrading our bus fleet. As serving on the Tourism Task Force, I've been firsthand to numerous of the comments related to buses. I understand that, you know, there's some in the community that feel they're obtrusive, the pollution, and in recognizing that, we are over the next 3 years going to upgrade our fleet to slightly smaller buses. Currently, we operate 45-foot motor coaches. The newer ones will be 39 feet and have a capacity of about 10 fewer passengers. So they'll be a little bit less intrusive. They're also newer and have newer emission standards. The EPA implemented new standards in 2009, I believe, and our buses meet those standards. So I feel that the process of this ordinance, it doesn't address the issue relating to actually improving the problem. I think working with industry through tourism best management practices, in which that program you could easily implement TOR's idea of the EPA test, the computer test. As an industry individual, I'd be more than happy to sign on to that and agree to that. I want my buses to meet emission standards just like everybody else does. So I guess my point is, you know, this is something I think we can work to improve through TBMP program, improving policies, you know, look at possible alternate shuttle drop-off locations to reduce traffic congestion in certain areas, as opposed to trying to just limit the buses, which will, I believe, cause multiple other issues to pop up and actually increase traffic. So thank you for your time.
Hello, Mayor and Assembly. I am Michelle Barker, and I am the owner of Sitka Bike and Hike. As you can see, me and my staff, we went through this ordinance over and over again. We looked at every single intent. We wanted to be intelligent in the way we responded. The ones that I picked were intents 4 and 5, and it talks about who we are as a community and what our culture is, and protecting the integrity of that. And just a gentle reminder, but my mother's people have been on this land for time immemorial. And our tradition is actually to see visitors from a far off distance, and we start singing you in, and you're welcome here, and that's who we are. And the whole time those visitors are here, we feed them, we celebrate with them, we sing songs. And then when they move to leave, we sing them out, and it's a sad song. So tourism has always been part of this community long before Western society moved into this community. It is ingrained in our culture. I am a third generation business owner in this community, and I was raised this way, and it's still my intent to carry that through in my company. But also even think about that when Western society did move in, we were coined as the Paris of the Pacific. And by golly, you don't get that name by not being a good host, right? So for the length of the history of this community, this has been an important part. And I know there's people maybe that don't remember that as well. But this is the way I was raised. And I just really think that it's important to remind people of who we are. This ordinance can really hurt this industry, as everybody is well aware. My request to this assembly, instead of trying to maybe strong arm people that's kind of what it feels like, I think, is happening right now. Partner with us, like Chris said, like Chuck said, like Trudy said. We're looking to partner with you guys. We still have all of our tour operators as local residents. That's phenomenal. I love that about this community. I had 36 employees. 3 of them were non-locals. They actually met my kids in college, and that's why I hired them. So 36 people in this community, half of which were Alaska Native, 13 were Kagwantan, which is my house, all worked for this company last year. And these are young kids coming up that are learning the way to communicate their culture to other people. And it's really important to who we are as a community. So when you say things like you're trying to protect it, remember, that's also a huge part of our history when you write things like that, and partner with us. We want to do better. We would love to move to electrical buses, but the infrastructure is just not there yet. So partner with us instead of doing things like this that kind of freak everybody out and feels like we're being strong arm in this industry. Thank you.
Anyone else for public comment this evening?
Good evening. My name is Richard Ween. In reviewing the memo and the ordinance, I feel that the intent is very good. And however, the ability to explain the rationale for all of this intent is actually quite apparently obvious. And that is why there are any number of questions that are brought to people here, brought to the assembly today. I think that you should actually pass it now, just so there's more conversation at the next meeting. And I think that that's something that is important. Now, as far as making an ordinance which is reasonable, it's important to know when you have in the memo, it says Sitka roads were not designed to handle the level of traffic that these buses are generating. Well, my notion is, I'm sorry, I like footnotes. I would like to see that this is made as a statement of fact, and I'd like to see the documentation as to what the limits and capacities of these roads are, because I think that that can very much help guide a decision. One of the interesting things I heard is, well, we need data. Well, the good news is that a lot of these emission standards and traffic standards, there is very cheap technology out there where, for example, I could buy an admission monitor, and I can buy or lease a automatic license plate reader, and I can know whether it's commercial or residential. It's not illegal. And I can track all of these things. And here we are making all these decisions. And that's why I think this is a good thing, because at least it's the first step on quantifying these things. And it's not just a quality of air. Never before have we had all those buses down at Harrigan Centennial Hall. I spent a lot of time in Manhattan, and you really have to impress me with emissions in order to get me to recognize there's a problem. But I think, yes, we need data. And I think this is easily available. And I think that is one of the things that the assembly should decide on. And I would like to know what is being cited about our travel capacity. I just think that, again, this needs to be spoken about at the next meeting. And I can't believe it was brought forward like this. Thank you.
Good evening, Jamie Cagle with Allen Marine. Thank you to the mayor and the assembly for all the time you put in helping serve this community. So Allen Marine being primarily a tourism-based business may or may not think that we're impacted by this ordinance, but we would be. We partner with many other operators to provide combination tours between the activities we do on the water and activities that are done on shore. I do not think that, or I know that this would have a large impact on us as an operator, could potentially impact jobs both seasonally and year-round. I also am a little disheartened by this and would encourage you not to pass this in any form, because we do have, I think, a system that is coming into place that Chris and Michelle and Chuck and Trudy have kind of alluded to, and that is TBMP. Tourism Best Management Practices is meant to deal with the interactions between tourism industry and the community. If there are concerns about certain roadways that are being utilized by vehicles that shouldn't be in that area, these are things that allow for communications. I don't know at what level everybody in the community is fully aware of it, but it has been utilized around the world. I know with the passion of Sitkans, we can do it better. And so I'd encourage not passing this and encourage education on what TBMP can bring to the community. Thank you.
Ma'am, public comment is limited to one per. Thank you.
I'm Larry Edwards. I already sent you a memo today, so I won't go over any of that, but I just want to say that I support having this passed on to a second reading. It's the only vehicle we have for dealing with the problems that we have with either buses or the cruise impacts writ large. It could have an effect for this year. So I think that there needs to be further discussion between now and the next assembly meeting and at that meeting, and see if we can find a way forward on this. Thank you.
My name is Andy Nye with Sitka Zodiac Adventures. I'm the one with the trailer park right out back. A free enterprise is a system, an economic system where a government places very few restrictions on the types of business activities or ownership that citizens want to engage in. Last year, this exact same time, I sat right here trying to work on the increase of the spaces and what they were going to cost for the spots here around the building. My spot went up 1,000% because of how beneficial they're going to be, how lucrative they were going to be. If this passes, if this goes through, my spot is going to become almost worthless, not worth 1,000% more. With 10 spots, there are 3 bus companies. It's on a first come, first served basis with 3 bus companies. There's a 33.3% chance that one of them will get here first. They're not going to come in holding hands saying, all right, let's share them. You get 33.3%, I get 33.3. They're not going to all go down in flames together. They're going to, first company's going to take the 10 buses, and let's say it's not the cruise terminal. They don't get any permits. They're not bringing anybody to town, and every spot around this building is now worthless. So what we bid on and what we got for last year as our spot to do business that was assured us that would be so lucrative and so valuable last year is now worth absolutely nothing. So just changing this bus thing changes a whole lot, not to mention all the businesses downtown, not to mention so much more. Not to mention, like they talk about these other tours that are running all around town for different tour companies transporting people. I think communication is the key. It was talked about, communication. We need communication. What's going on? I think having something thrown out like this, just blindsiding people, hurts everybody. Are we communicating? Are we talking about this? Yeah, we want a clean community. Yeah, we want to work on stuff that keeps Sitka beautiful, keeps it green, keeps it clean. Let's work together. If something like this goes through, it will kill the economy. It will hurt little businesses like this. I can't imagine big businesses, but all of a sudden nobody comes to town. So school buses are exempt. Ride is exempt. Great, that's for locals. But I'm also a local trying to feed my family. And if the tourists don't come to town, I can't do that. So I encourage you and urge you to please not vote this through. It would be very, very bad and really hurt. We need to go for that free enterprise and help us out. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Martina Kurse. I did not intend to speak. However, I want to comment that I found this very, very interesting. And we have heard the voices of a lot of businesses that will be affected. And I don't think that anybody wants to do that. However, what I did not hear are the voices of those who brought this issue on the table, and that those were the people who call you during the summer or on certain days with a lot of traffic. And those are the ones who really pay with their health and well-being so that these businesses can thrive. And I really want to plead that these people, and those are all of us actually who breathe here, we also want to have a voice in this. So we don't want it to boil down to businesses, because every business owner here has probably kids and grandkids who go to Baranof, and they are right in the in the path of the crop dusters. And so there must be some kind of solution. And I see this as a very first step. And thank you so much for bringing this up and for allowing this discussion. Thanks.
Hi, my name is Alexa Blickenstaff, and I work for Alaska Coach Tours. Those big green buses that everybody loves so much. And I just want to say, when I heard about the ordinance, when I read it, I just immediately, just to see, I started looking at our schedule, because I help make the schedules for like how many buses we're going to need each day to, do all our tours and all that jazz. And so we help with Allen Marine, and like what normally would take one bus to do their tour would take two buses with this ordinance. What would take two buses would take three buses. So it just, I believe, would make more of an issue, as a lot of people have said already. And then just the other thing I wanted to say, we used to do the shuttle. The last year we did the shuttle was back in 2022, before it was taken over by the cruise ship terminal. And on I remember planning out those days, we were like, okay, bare minimum, just buses assigned to the shuttle. It took 12 53-seater buses just to effectively bring people in and out of town. And I was out here at Centennial Hall a lot of days, on the days where we had 12 to 15, 16 buses, and then also help from Trudy and help from Tribal Tours. And we still had, that insane line. I don't know if any of you remember, but insane lines wrapped around Centennial Hall going up towards the bridge, people being in the street, there being major safety concerns there. So even if, the cruise ship terminal was to get all 10 of these permits, it still would not, 10 of those buses is still not enough to effectively and safely, I think, transport all those people. I definitely think we all want a solution, and I really have a lot of hope in the task force. And I think this ordinance kind of undermines all the hard work that they have put into finding a solution. So yeah, I just urge you to not go with this ordinance. Thank you so much.
there anyone else this evening for public comment on ordinance 24-05? Seeing none, we will bring it back to the assembly for deliberation. Are you starting to, okay, so before we start deliberation, I do need to disclose I am a downtown business owner. I will not see any personal financial gain or hurt from this ordinance. And as has been ruled in the past, Deputy Mayor, that I do belong to a class of businesses and have been allowed to participate in similar discussions, some even more focused discussions in the past. Unless you disagree, Deputy Mayor?
I do not disagree.
Thank you.
You're fine to participate.
Thank you. So then Kevin, please begin.
Thank you. I really wanted to speak first. I just feel like it's important to kind of set the discussion up properly or in a way that what sets us on the right track. I want to thank everyone first for speaking, and I really understand what you're saying, Mr. Mayor. And when we either clap or boo, whatever, it makes it uncomfortable for people to speak either way. So, and I'm proud to be a part of a community that does that and allows everyone to speak their mind appropriately. So I was writing all these notes on everything I was going to say. So first of all, I'm not in favor of this. It's not that I don't agree with the intent, as a lot of people have said. We want to kind of manage our town and make sure it doesn't get overwhelmed and a lot of other things. But the biggest thing that I wanted to say right off is that, you know, when people elect, I was talking to someone once. I said, wow, there's not many people come to meetings anymore. They don't really speak up. And they're like, well, why would they want to? They hired you, you know, to not that no one should and people should come, but in the government form we have, they elect people to serve on their behalf and their interests based on the input that they hear from people. So my point in that story is that so they elect us, this body, people elect us so they can kind of like live their lives and do their things. If they have something to input, and they'll let people know, and people always speak, and that's great. But they do that so that they don't have to worry about rash decisions being made, things that could very well affect their livelihood in a very short period of time. I think that, Tori, I respect you. I respect Tim. And I think it was born out of a good intent. But what this does is insert a lot of uncertainty to this town, which is very, very dangerous. People need to know that even if there is a decision that's going to come that's going to affect their lives, it'll be done over a period of time that you understand and have plenty of time to input. But a two-read ordinance is very dangerous to put this kind of thing on. And I'm not attacking you. I'm just saying, you know, any type of major thing should really go with, you know, discussion direction items on assembly agenda, coffee meets with people, and then town halls. But this is a major thing that could have a very negative impact. And I agree with primarily all of the comments that people said who were speaking against this ordinance. And especially that people are not saying we don't need to plan this. We do. We need to manage this growth appropriately. And I've often, you know, thought a lot about it. I think we all have. I think a lot of people in town have. This is a concern, but we want to make sure that we manage this growth in a responsible, thoughtful way that allows for commerce and helps us, because this has a direct effect on our funding for the city, for like paying for things like school. Money is free. It has to come from somewhere. So this is a way we do that. But we also obviously, and I don't think I've heard really anybody who says, well, I don't care about the cost. I just want to make a lot of money. Pretty much everyone I talk to who has a business and is concerned, not just on this one, but others, is they want to have responsible growth and responsible business. And I understand that it takes time to implement changes. You know, just from the first year when we had the planning session or planning meetings where we just kind of came up literally just a logistical plan, to, you know, having the things with the with the permits and stuff for here, this takes time. And I know it can be scary and concerning when you see so many people. Last year, it felt overwhelmed, but I think there's people making compromises. Chris McGraw mentioned that he is going to be redoing his buses. That's a huge concession. And people are willing to make concessions, but not in this way. It is too, I feel that it's too dangerous to even pass on first reading, because then you're saying a message. You're one ordinance away from losing your livelihood. And that is not a good message we want to send. We want to let people to know that we as an elected body are making methodical, thoughtful, long-term decisions based on community input and the facts. That's what they need to know, that we all need to know. So I definitely will not be supporting this. And I encourage every single one of us here to vote no. Again, to clarify, it's not that I don't think that some people's concerns are not valid. I do, but we need to do this carefully and thoughtfully, is what I'm saying. Thank you.
Tor? Yeah, so a few thoughts, not in a particular order, kind of was writing notes with things going on. So like I said at the beginning, the number of buses, if we move this forward, is up for negotiation. I mean, it's not, it was put in as a placeholder. But, you know, I can't think of any industry that likes any kind of regulation. Maybe we could find one or two, but not very many. But also, every single government in the world has regulations for good reason. Again, the intent here is to provide some guardrails and to acknowledge that we're being impacted. And honestly, we don't have very many tools in our toolbox if we're gonna control the amount. And this isn't, I kind of take a little bit of a sense with saying we're blindsiding, because I brought this up 3 months ago, saying we were doing this, and not very many people reached out. And you know, there's I mean, I can read the writing on the wall, but the problem with entirely voluntary controls is they're just that. And we would not get to decide how many buses are on our streets or how many people come in. And it would be, well, this is what the industry thinks is a reasonable amount of traffic, and we don't get any say. And so if nothing else comes out of this, if we're going to talk about tourism best practices, we need to be involved with that, and we need to have some teeth in that. There needs to be not just, okay, this is what the group wants to do, and we need to have some input into that and have some control, because otherwise, when something's completely voluntary, whenever the situation changes and you can get more, you know, it's like, hey, let's put a few more buses on, we wouldn't have any say. A couple of kind of side notes. As far as the electric buses, there are options now. I know that since the schools aren't being used in the summer and they've got high power into them, and also charging would probably take mostly at night when power levels are low. So but that's kind of a side of thing. You know, part of the issue why we brought this forward is that if we wait and for all the data to come in and everything, it's done. At that point, it's over. So you know, I hope that we come out of this with the idea that, okay, the industry needs to move on the tourism best practices and the city needs to be involved. And if it doesn't, the city government has options. This, not necessarily this, but something. And, you know, you know, when we looked, I mean, what I was honestly afraid of is when we looked at the high number days last year, And everybody's saying, well, there's long lines for the buses. Well, I don't want the response to be, well, then let's put more buses on and make the problem worse. And, you know, we had almost daily complaints about soot and a number of other, just the heavy traffic. And I don't think you need to be a traffic engineer to say that this is not what these roads were designed for, especially when you get off on the smaller streets. So I'm not going to go into every single thing that everybody talked about, but that we definitely need to be aware that the city should have some controls. I hope that, I mean, if that people say, okay, if 10 buses isn't enough, what is a good number? And then go to next meeting and go to next reading and possibly adjust it again. That's the way this works. But we definitely, if we don't do it now, we're going to have to find some way to maintain some control. So, thank you.
Chris?
I'm just going to come right out and say it. I'm adamantly opposed to this. I don't like it. Is circumventing our task force in what they're trying to do right now. It's obviously a backdoor way of trying to limit cruise tourism, undermining the task force. I don't like that at all. Then we get into some of the internals of this. It keeps saying the department. Which department? We don't have DEQ. So what? We're going to start hiring more FTEs to start monitoring emissions or put more on our PD? Or who the hell is going to do this? What is it going to cost? Highways were intended to be built or were built with the intent of transportation of people and material. They were built for economic stability and economic improvement and commerce. That's what HPR and that's what Sawmill are. They're highways. They're doing what they are intended to do. This whole ordinance is discriminating against one industry right now, attacking one industry. This is ridiculous. So, okay, we can start looking at not discriminating and having this come down on everyone. We're creating more bureaucracy and more just costs. And for what? A few vehicles in our little town. These DEQ standards were created for big cities. And I've seen it. I live down south. I've seen the smog. I understand it. That is not Sitka. I get to see Sitka from afar all summer long. There is no smog here. Yeah, I get it. Some of these buses aren't running the cleanest as we would like them. I've asked what engines are in these buses, and it was provided to us. This is Detroit 60 series. I happen to know the Detroit 60 series. I ran a vessel this summer with the Detroit 60 series. It is a tier 2 emissions bus, 4-cycle engine, high pressure rail, built to be efficient for the era. And it is efficient. I can attest to that. The motor that I ran was incredible. Sorry, I'm getting worked up. I want Sitka to stay an Alaskan city, not a down south city, not a Californian city. If that's the stuff you want, please move there. We don't need that here. Now, I'm not an environmentalist, that's obvious, but I do appreciate a clean running engine. I have a bit of a compromise to this in a completely different tact. This ordinance is clearly using all stick and punishing these businesses, which I don't approve of that. I would say, let's use incentives, let's use carrot. The EVs that people can buy in this town, and many of them have, and I have no problem with that, I think that's great. They are offered tax credits. for their EVs. Why don't we offer something similar? Maybe not for an EV bus, because honestly, I don't think it's really logistically doable. But why don't we offer some sort of incentives, tax breaks, credits, reduce permit prices for these companies if they so choose to buy a tier 3 bus, which I believe at tier 3 for these trucking standards starts bringing into the DEF systems and higher emission standards. DEF is the diesel exhaust fluid. They've been proven to be very efficient, take a lot of the toxins and everything out of the air. Why don't we offer incentives for anyone who decides to bring in tier 3 buses or tier 4 buses? We're going to continue to improve our air quality, get what people want, but yet not hit them with the stick by giving them a carrot, something to achieve. I really commend Mr. McGraw. He's continually every year replacing his bus fleet. They've gotten rid of the 2-stroke Detroits. They've gotten 4-stroke Detroits, which are a huge step up. He's now apparently replacing half of his bus fleet with these tier 3 emission standards. He's making improvements. So we got to give him the time to do this. And if we can help them with some sort of incentive along the way, why not? I don't like the direction this is going. Even before I got into city politics, I kept hearing how the city was anti-business, so unfriendly to business. And this ordinance just proves that. Just continues to prove how we're unfriendly to people who are actually trying to help us, actually trying to bring commerce into the city. This is ridiculous. And I also don't like that we have a government entity, a city, trying to have control over traffic, control over people coming into our town. I live down south, man. I mean, yeah, I would have loved to have closed down Highway 26, Highway 30, Highway 101, and keep all the tourists from coming through my community. You can't do that. It's unfair. It's unfair to the people who want to come and visit and just simply drive through. I don't like this overreach. I'm adamantly against it. I'm for smaller government. I'm for less bureaucracy. And this is just adding on to that. And it just, I see it as the start of something terrible, because buses are only the start. And then it's only going to go from there. So I'm sorry. Totally against it.
You or me? Go ahead.
There's more wrong than there's right with this. And I'm against limited entry of the commons, period. Thank you very much.
So I do have some comments on this. I'm gonna have a lot of bullet points, more for consideration, for discussion, than a solid put together novel here on this. Any of my comments tonight, I listened to what the people who came forward had to say. So if my comment tonight doesn't mirror your truth, I'm not trying to downplay anyone who spoke tonight, because I know that you came up and you spoke your truth. However, these are some notes that I have taken along the way. You'll see by the end of this that I am not in favor of this ordinance as written, and a lot of my notes will coincide with that. But as some points for consideration, and I think the largest one for me is that I think this ordinance is actually going to have the opposite effect of how it's intended to. Sitka Sound Cruise Terminal just indicated that they're buying new buses. If they're limited to 40 passenger buses, they're going to simply buy twice the amount of buses. And they're actually going to double the traffic that's on our roads, which is not the intent of this ordinance. They still have a way to get people into town, and just going to be on those smaller buses. I find it unfortunate that in this instance, I think we're specifically trying to call out one or two companies. And I find it very unfortunate that Sitka Tours is getting caught in the crossfire here, that they're going to have to compete with the other two companies, which I believe are the target, in order to get some permits. It was indicated earlier, a 50-year history here, and I'm not willing to flush that down the drain. I believe that this ordinance puts us at a large legal risk. I think this ordinance is very targeted towards certain industries and certain companies. I don't know if anyone was aware, but our governor has recently joined a lawsuit against the Biden administration and reduced emissions on our roadways. So does this put us in the governor's crosshairs as well? I think this is a disguised attempt to limit cruise numbers. We're talking about limiting buses on the roads. I think a lot of people tonight spoke to this limiting effect that this is going to have. And I think that's actually the true thing here. And I really fear going down a path that's not been fully legally vetted, because I think it puts us at a legal risk. Along the lines of a targeted industry, we don't see people talking about the increase in rental cars we've had over the years. We don't see people talking about the increase of semi trucks with fish going from one end of the road to, quite honestly, the complete opposite end of the road, doing I'm not going to call it damage, but they are putting miles on our road, loaded down with fish. Just all the cargo that does come into our community in the summertime. We have a lot of freight moving on our roads. I am upset is too strong of a word, but I am concerned that this ordinance didn't go in front of our tourism task force. And I want to apologize to our tourism task force, because I value you more than that. And I think that this is an exact ordinance that should have come before you. I wish that that you had the opportunity to present a recommendation to the assembly, as opposed to the assembly doing what I view as your job. I want to bring up an email that we all received, and I think it hit a point that no one tonight has talked about, and it was actually an eye opener for me, and that is evacuation capacity if we are to have a natural disaster here in town. If we limit buses on our roads, and for instance, hypothetical situation, I don't know how real, but Japan gets an earthquake and a tsunami warning is in effect. How do we get all the people back on the boat so that boat can turn its bow out to sea and get out of town before a tsunami hits? I think that email was full of a lot of very good points on emergency evacuation capacity. And I actually think our local emergency planning commission needs to take this one up if they haven't already. It's been talked about this will increase the safety along public roadways. Well, we did see in one of the early years without sufficient busing, the amount of people walking to town. I'm going to say that that's probably far more dangerous than having a bus on the road. Those people walking is going to happen in this instance. This is not going to stop any boats from coming to Sitka. All the boats are still going to be here. All the people are still going to want to get downtown, and they're going to find a way, even if that means walking. I'm concerned about who's going to implement this. This ordinance says nothing about who is going to implement it, who's going to take care of it, who's going to do any of this. So that's something that still needs to be hashed out for me. Electric vehicles, they're still going to use the road, but an electric bus is allowed. So now we're looking at, if we're actually going to item number 3 in the purpose, protect public roadways to reduce the need for repair and replacement. An electric bus is going to do that just the same as a gas bus would. As a side note, Juneau did buy an electric bus, and it took it over a year to get running correctly, and it still doesn't run quite right. In fact, I was talking with their mayor recently, and after having been broken down for the first 6 months of its life, a technician came up, and before he was even completely boarded on his plane, that electric bus broke again and was unable to be used. And then just finally, actually 2 more points. One on emissions. I understand emissions. I get it. I don't believe that emissions are a positive thing in anyone's life. I have been previously stuck behind Old Smoky, and that was not a pleasurable experience. I'm glad that that efforts have been made to eliminate buses like that. But when Delta came to town, no one was talking about the concerns about airplane fuel burn, which is going to be a whole lot more emissions in a very short amount of time than a couple buses in the roadways. And while I believe we have an extremely high quality of air, and I don't disagree with anyone talking about health concerns of emissions, I simply do wonder how people live in a town like LA, where they do have smog that lingers over the city continuously, while we have a few cars going up and down our roads with pretty strong headwinds. I do believe that we need to have our tourism task force continue to look into tourism management best practices. I think a lot of their time has been caught up in the correct amount of tourism, something that we may or may not have much control over. But what we do have control over is a tourism management best practice plan. And I think that's where a little bit more effort could be put in order to alleviate some of our concerns. So again, a very long rambling some points here, but those are points that I wrote down, a few of them before this meeting and then as the meeting went forward. So I appreciate everyone's time on this one. I don't think it was an easy conversation for some, and I appreciate everyone who stood up and came forward to talk to the assembly.
I just want to make the point that this was taken to the Tourism Commission. And very intentionally, with the kind of a bullet points of what we were going to do, talking about, and ask for their input. And so that was, I wanted to take it to them at a point where it was still easy to make changes. And so that was definitely done. So that's all.
Do you mind if to follow up, you said you took that to the Tourism Commission. What was their input?
It was remarkably quiet. I mean, they kind of looked at it and said, okay, thank you for doing this. I gave them all a copy, or I think we did. We made copies of the kind of bullet points. And I said, hey, reach out to me if you want to comment on this. And they didn't want to speak to it much right then. So I didn't hear anything. Okay. But I definitely, and Tim and I talked about it, made sure that they were aware of it and that what we were talking about doing, and they were given time to comment. And so that, I understand, like the mayor said, everybody speaks their own truth, and I understand that. And they say this is an attempt always was for a chance for people to come up and speak to it and speak about, all the complaints we've gotten, and to say, okay, this was your chance to actually talk about something that was a vote. I don't think this strictly rushed. It took months. And so, I can read the writing on the wall. I know what's going to happen. But again, if we don't come up with some tourism best practices or something like that that has some teeth in it, maybe not this assembly, but something will come up, because as I know we can't control everything, but I think it's if we don't see some improvements, something like this will be back, whether it's me or somebody else. And that's the way of the world.
I guess I'm not entirely surprised that the Tourism Task Force didn't have many comments on some bullet points. They're operating under a charge of the entire assembly. If just a couple members came and asked to do some work on their behalf, I would pause too, because the assembly gave a charge to the Tourism Task Force. Now, if we wanted to send this to them, I think that would be a decision of the body. I don't think that that's a decision that, that two members should be directing the task force to do.
Can I say one more comment? So I made my comments heard, and I appreciate everyone listening. The only thing I would finally say is to those who are concerned and in support of this, and those who have concerns about the increase in tourism, I would encourage you humbly to give it time and be patient. This community is not going to be overrun, but the concerns are valid. We have a task force that's working on this. I believe that most business owners and workers actually want the same thing, a thriving tourism industry, but one that doesn't overwhelm us. And so I would just encourage you strongly to be patient and let the process work itself out. It'll be okay.
Anything else from the assembly? Sarah?
All right, on the motion to approve ordinance 2024-05 on first reading, Mr. Yestad,
No.
Mayor Eisenbais,
No?
Mr. Mosier,
No.
Mr. Christensen,
Yes.
and Mr. Celine.
No.
All right, the motion fails, 1-4.
Thank you. As it has been a minute since we've had a break, we will take a brief recess and please be seated when you're ready to continue. We are going to go ahead and get going with the rest of our agenda here in a minute. If you need to continue your conversations, I ask if you could do it out in the hallway, please. All right, thank you for that. Do appreciate it. So we'll carry on with our agenda this evening. That'll bring us to persons to be heard. This is public participation for any item on or off tonight's agenda, not to exceed 3 minutes.
Okay, Barbara Bingham, and now I'm here appropriately. I just want to, as I'm speaking for myself, and certainly not speaking for the task force, but I am a member of the task force, and I am on the TBMP committee. And with the resignation of Phyllis Hackett, it's myself, Rich McClear, and now Ryan Gluth, who has not had a chance to participate yet. So it's a very small committee. And I just wanted to confirm, as Tor alluded to, the voluntary nature of the program. And in spite of our best efforts, we will not have a really effective, completely effective program. Certainly not for 2024. Hopefully by 2025, we'll have some things in place. But the committee has already recognized that in order to have the TBMP make any difference, we will need ordinances to back it up. Juneau's had a very successful, apparently very successful voluntary program. It remains to be seen if we can make that happen here. And so, like I say, we'll see what our best efforts can produce. And I personally am enjoying being on that committee. But we'll just see what we can do. We will be back, I'm sure, as time goes on, asking for ordinances to help us administer, what the recommendations of the program. And the other thing is that, again, my personal observation, the task force was given the 5 directives, a tall order for the amount of time we had. And as much as we are willing to work with the Assembly and try to do our best, I personally feel that we're not going to accomplish very much in the next 2 months, and that we have left to us. And so that means a commission, and we're talking now longer and longer periods of time for effective action. And personally, or not personally, but realistically, we do not have unlimited amounts of time to achieve a balance that will help us to have a solid economic base in this town when things begin to deteriorate economically around the country and around the globe with the increasing impacts of climate change. It will make a difference. Thank you.
Hi, we didn't get it. My name is Leah Mason again. We didn't get a chance to do any fact checking, but it's pretty well established that all roads are engineered for particular expectations, and that a town with a highway of 14 miles is not actually going to be built to the same level of engineering robustness as something in LA. So that needs to be taken into account. For those who are curious, for an example is, while a truck axle carrying 18,000 pounds is only 9 times heavier than a 2,000-pound automobile axle, it does 5,000 times the damage. And as I said, again, we have nothing, as far as I'm aware, no memorandum of understanding with the state that they will fix these highways that actually serve as the trunk routes to our homes. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Richard Ween. I find it very interesting that firstly, I know the intent of Tor's and Tim's ordinance was well-meaning, but it certainly was constructed to fail, and fail it did indeed tonight with some very obvious shortcomings. The important thing to realize, I just have some bullet points. We talk about emergency capacity in a tsunami. If we had an explosion, the question is, what is the emergency capacity of our hospital? 2 ORs, 2 surgeons, 2 anesthesiologists, you hit the wall instantly. You can only deal with maybe 1 or 2 people in that situation. The bitter truth is, and we've gone over this over my entire practice here, we do not have the capability of dealing with mass casualty, no matter how wonderful the Mount Edgecombe students look like with Moulage. When you have a plane crash, it is going to be triage and it's going to be a disaster. And to move buses down to get them off is a ridiculous reason to think so. If that were the true reason, then we should really have limits to how many people come in here if that is your concern. The other thing is that I hear that, what can I say, that Mr. Mosier had talked about uncertainty and change, and that we shouldn't be changing so quickly and so forth. Well, this is a self-inflicted wound. The number of tourists increased so rapidly that we didn't have time to react, and that was just thrown upon us. And where was the city council then? In talking about managing this change. I had said on multiple occasions, you build your firm foundation and build up, and then we build up to the correct number, not have an emesis of tourists on our city and then work it backward and then talk about how we're doing things. And this has only been for 2 years. Now with these numbers. And let me tell you, just as a quick aside, that the Carnival Cruise Line had a downfall in its revenue because of the Red Sea incidences that are going on now. And their stock went down. I follow all of this stuff. And the interesting thing is, where do you think they're going to make up that revenue? They're going to say, okay, forget about it. My guess is they're going to be pushing more people to come to places like Alaska. And I can tell you, the assembly needs to wake up.
Hi, it's me, Ryan, again. I'm still here because I guess we're still talking about this. I would just like to talk about some stuff because I honestly, when I first read it, thought it was a real genuine attempt to actually go a little greener, which, like I said, I'm a little for, and I think that's appropriate steps. But now it's come to light that it's pretty much just a backdoor to control tourism. Not everyone here knows me, but my mom is Michelle Barker. She's been running Sitka Bike and Hike. I've worked for her since I was 14. That means I have 16 years of experience in this industry. Now, some of you might not regard that because I was 14, but I've been here all the way. And I remember in 2008, when we initiated a head tax on all those cruise people coming through. And what did the cruise ships do? They left. They didn't want to come here. There's other ports of call. Alaska doesn't spend any money on advertising because everyone wants to come here. If we try and milk a river, it's not going to work. Like, I understand that we want to add the limit. We don't want to become Juneau. Like, we want to keep Sitka a small town. I love Sitka. I love that I could go downtown and look for stuff before I buy it on Amazon. I love that. But this method of doing it and going behind people's back, that's not okay. We're a community. We're supposed to do stuff together. That's the way I was raised. And I think that we're getting lost in that message. And we need to figure out something that works for everybody. It's not just a few who get to do whatever they want. We're all in it together. We're all on this island together. And we need to remember that. Thank you.
I'm Larry Edwards. I would just like to report on an article that was in Cruise Hive, I think last week, that as of last week, Princess Cruises bookings to Alaska are 20% above last year's. And it alluded to some of the other lines, but didn't get figures on them, but all their sales are way up. So we're way behind the 8 ball on this. And just to comment on the previous speaker and what happened in 2008. At that time, the head tax that was in question that the cruise line snapped back at was actually a state head tax, and they cut back on cruise visits region-wide here in Southeast. The other thing that happened then was the recession, which had an effect for a couple of years. And another factor on top of that was that the cruise dock in Hoonah started up. It wasn't yet the big thing that it is now, but that started up and it was on the inside and easier to get to. So that was the reason some of the ships didn't come here. But then it ended up being a slump that, finally got back up above 200,000 in 2019. And before 2008, 2001 to 2009, we averaged 240,000. I think the town was really doing well, business-wise at that level. And that's what we need to be shooting for. We've got massive overshoot and we need to get back to where we were and then figure out where to go from there. Thank you.
Anyone else for persons to be heard this evening? Seeing none, that'll bring us to reports. Our previous discussion is kind of a perfect segue into my report this evening. Myself and the administrator did attend the Pacific Northwest Cruise Symposium in Seattle. It was actually a symposium that far exceeded my expectations for being the first event of its kind. It was very well put together and I thought very well attended. I actually think more people showed up than they originally intended and kind of had to shift. It was such a featured event that our governor actually flew down and was able to make a keynote address at the opening reception there. So quite a good turnout. It was very interesting being the focus of attention as opposed to in Miami, where we're a very small side note. So I do believe in the future that this will completely eliminate any need for us to send any officials to Miami for Sea Trade Cruise Global. I did have the opportunity at the lunch there to sit next to an individual named Jason Park. He's the new managing director for CLIA North America. Nothing big in that conversation, but just kind of some small talk at the table and kind of getting to know him. We also did have an opportunity to get about a half hour with the CEO of Norwegian Cruise Lines. And the point that I really wanted to bring up and hit home for him was the sailings that are going to start as soon as April 6th and the sailings that are going to last as long as I believe it's the last week of October for Norwegian Cruise Lines. We did bring up the concern that our community is not willing to open its doors and have those boats come in, that they're far too early and far too late, and that they're placing an undue burden on our community. While I think the point was received, nothing's going to change for 24. Those bookings are here and they're going, and I see the same style of bookings in 25, and I'm not sure that anything's going to change there. It was an interesting point that as opposed to, they, not only Norwegian, but some of the cruise partners frequently say that we want to collaborate with your community, that we want to come into your community and be welcomed. When I bring up a very real concern for not only our community, but others in the Southeast corridor, I wasn't necessarily met with, oh, great, we'll work on changing this. What I was met with is the offer of some offsetting programs. Offsetting in certain ways, but not necessarily offsetting in others, such as, bringing students on board to see the inner workings of cruise ships and such. So I think there was a genuine effort there, and I appreciate the CEO for his time. But I don't think that in the next at least 2 years, we're going to see those early April boats change. So we should have, at least this year on Mondays, the Norwegian Bliss come into town. That's all I have for my report. John?
Thank you, Mayor. I'll just add a few more things from the Pacific Northwest Symposium visit. Yes, we did get to meet with a lot of the leadership from some of the individual lines and with CLIA. And a message that I pushed to them was asking for more engagement and communication with the community. Get involved here in Sitka, find out what the needs are, and work with the community on finding things that work for everyone. And it seemed that door is going to be open here in the very near future. And I think they took those comments to heart. Just to go on with some of the individual sessions we attended, we sat in a concurrent session on port and destination infrastructure development. Hearing how cities can work with maybe it's private dock owners or even with their own docks and their own infrastructure, how they can kind of spread the impact out, create more activities for people to do so you're not concentrated in one area. I did not attend the tour and attraction development and marketing. We couldn't be at all of them at the same time, but Visit Sitka was also in attendance, and I'm not sure if they popped into that session or not. There was a session on environmental practices, lots of talk there. And then we were back in the room for a cultural tourism and indigenous people session that was meant to explain the role that indigenous peoples play in supporting the tourism economy in Washington, British Columbia, and Alaska. But I'd like to reiterate that felt like we got more attention at this session. When we go to Sea Trade Global, the same leadership from the same lines are there, but we don't get that individualized attention. When we came in here, Alaska being the third largest cruise market now, they wanted to focus on us, and we got time with them. It looks like I'm running out of time too, so I'll give a very quick update. I attended Southeast Conference last week. The best presentation that everybody looks forward to is the Alaska 2023 economic updates. So we got a presentation on the economic outlook, and the big message from that is Alaska's population is declining as a whole, and it's creating a lot of workforce challenges, and everybody's hurting for labor right now, and it's something we're going to have to find ways to draw people back here, industries to draw people back in, and mariculture was a big topic of that conversation. So I'm out of time. Thanks.
Brian, if you're still on the line, did you have a report?
I am on the line. I continue to work remotely from the Seattle area. I'm still available by cell phone or email during the working hours. I will be in Sitka for the next assembly meeting on the 7th of February. I will be in town the day of and the day before and be available for in-person meetings if anyone needs to speak with me then. Thank you.
Thank you. Liaison representatives. Scott?
Library's still trying to get that copier fixed.
Yes, today I attended the Parks and Rec Committee meeting at noon. They were talking about a couple things, how quick city staff has helped with getting the trails cleared in town and areas near town, as well as Sitka Trail Works is helping with clearing out some of the down trees on the trails themselves. Also, staff member mentioned that we're going to be getting in the Moore Field. I didn't have a chance to follow up with him, but in Moore Field, we're going to be getting next month, I think, under warranty, new lights for that field, which is kind of a big deal, I think. So that'll be really nice. Yeah, that's it. Thank you.
Any other liaison representatives? Sarah?
Let's see, we have our regular meeting February 27th, and then a budget meeting February 29th.
Thank you. Any other reports this evening? Seeing none, I would bring us to adjournment.
Motion to adjourn.
All those in favor say aye. Any opposed? Thank you all for your time. We are adjourned.